And what is going on with eating? So if you have one meal, and say this meal comprises 2,000 calories or whatever, and you have this meal at 6 p.m. and you fast for 24 hours until you eat again at 6 p.m. If you have this one meal a day, why is it better to do that than to have, say, smaller meals of like 500 calories multiple times per day, little snacks?
Well, because going back 6 million years back, we're in the trees and then in the savannah, our bodies were designed, or evolved to respond to adversity. And we've removed that from our lives because it feels good. But we need adversity to be resilient and to fight disease. So what I'm saying is that period of hunger, and it's not even hunger these days. I don't even feel it. I feel great if I don't eat. And it takes a few weeks. So anyone wants to start, give it some time, give it a couple of weeks. But what's happening in the body is you're turning on these adversity hormesis response genes. We call them longevity genes. And they make the body fight aging and diseases. And so by eating through the day, the traditional, you got to have breakfast, best meal of the day, blah, blah, blah. First of all, it's not true that you need to be full or fed to think clearly. It's very clear that people who are fasting have as good, if not better, mental acuity. Okay, that's one. So I think that needs to be thrown out the window. Kids are different. We're not talking about kids, we're talking about adults. And we're not talking about malnutrition or starvation too, let's be clear. But we are talking about lengthening that window of not eating. So if you always are satiated, fed, your body says, hey, I've just killed a mammoth. No problem. Don't need to worry about survival. I'm just going to go forth and multiply and screw my long-term survival. So this is all about long-term survival by making the body freak out that there's tough times. And that's running away, like running away from a cat, like the savannah, and being hungry. Or, there's molecular reasons that all this works. But, trust me, that the data is very clear that this is the way to go if you want to be healthy in your 80s and 90s.
Well, it actually does make sense when you put it in that way, that your body, when you're fed, relaxes. And so if you're just doing that all day long, and I know for a fact that when I am not fed and I go and do things, whether it's perform, one of the things that I've been doing is I don't eat before shows. Like I take many hours before a comedy show. And I used to just eat whenever. I just eat, and then I would do shows and I would have a meal like an hour before the show, and I'm really trying to wake up. I'm really trying to come on. But I've now recognized, actually I saw a video where Cat Williams was talking about this. Do you know who Cat Williams is? Hilarious comedian.
I do know.
Well, you're slipping if you don't. He's hilarious. When he was doing this interview and he was saying, they were what's your process before a show? And one of the things is I don't eat. I make sure I don't eat. And I was like, that's wise. That's really smart. And I'm like, I needed to hear that even though I kind of knew it, but I'd never written it down. I never associated it absolutely, but now I have. Now I do not eat before shows. I won't do it unless I know I have 3 hours.
So what's your average day look like?
It depends entirely on whether or not I'm doing podcasts. If I'm doing podcasts, generally I'm up early. I get my workouts in. I usually have something to eat after the workout, so I'm talking about I eat around 11 a.m. That's my first meal of the day, and then I go and do my stuff. And I generally feel like my workouts are so strenuous that I need some sort of nutrition afterwards, some sort of fruit to pump the muscles back up and give them some sugar and some protein. So usually I'm eating meat and maybe an apple or something like that. That's a normal meal for me. And then I don't eat again until nighttime.
Great. And you're not snacking?
No. Maybe. Sometimes after a podcast, I'll have we have these On It Warrior bars that are just buffalo meat and some cranberries and stuff. I like those. I'll eat one of those.
Good. Well, at least you're going till 11. You got that sleep.
Yeah.
So you're probably not eating late.
Yeah, it's just the strenuous activity. My workouts are very hard. So after them, I feel like I need something. I don't like that feeling of a brutal workout and then being starving for 4 or 5 hours, because then it becomes a distraction. So I listen to my body. But if I don't work out, I don't eat until dinner. Say a day like today, I didn't work out today. So I woke up, hung out with the dog, had some coffee, sat out, went over some emails, did some shit, just a relaxed morning. and then rolled into here, no food.
Perfect.
I won't eat until we're going to dinner tonight. I won't
Great.
eat until then.
Yeah, with Lex. That'll be fun.
Yes, that's going to be fun. And John Donaher.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Looking
great.
forward to meeting him.
Yes.
So you're doing the right things, certainly better than most people. But what I'm trying to build or make are molecules that mimic fasting as well. So if you cannot fast like I do, then you can just take a pill. And what we've shown in mice at least is that if you give them this molecule that I'm taking, NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide, which as I mentioned speeds up metabolism, does all that stuff, those mice could run 50% further. These old mice, we gave it to them for 3 weeks, put them back on a treadmill, and those that had the NMN in their water ran 50% further. They had better blood flow, better oxygenation, better energy. And that is literally exercise in a pill.
That's crazy.
So we're in late-stage human clinical trials now.
When do you think this is going to be released to the public?
Well, it depends on what the FDA does and if
Those
it works.
motherfuckers.
Oh, don't get me in trouble. I love the FDA.
I
but
do
it's fair
too.
enough. Fair enough. They protect us.
Yes.
But yeah, we're going through the procedure that has been around since, as I mentioned, early 20th century. But we've done hundreds of people now, certainly dozens, over the last few years. And we know at least that this molecule is apparently safe and raises the levels of the molecule we want to build up. The molecule is called NAD. Do you want me to talk a little about NAD?
Yes, please.
So NAD is what those mitochondria, little Mike and Ike, little energy-producing things, use to make energy. So you need. There are two molecules in the body that are really great. You need both for life. And without them, as I said, you're dead. ATP is the energy, and NAD makes that. And as we get older, the levels of NAD go down. Our body makes less and actually also degrades it more. If you take my skin, or in the study that they took people's skin, when you're 50, you've got half the levels of this NAD than you did when you were 20, which is scary because this molecule is required for life. Without it, we're dead in 30 seconds. So what we're doing with our clinical trials is giving a precursor, a smaller version of this that the body will turn into NAD and bring those levels back up from where they are when you're old to where you are when you're young. And we see, at least in animals and hopefully in people, that it revs up their metabolism and makes them fight aging and disease like we do when we're young. I mean, there's a reason we don't get a lot of heart disease when we're young or Alzheimer's, because our bodies fight against disease as we get older, and especially if we sit around or smoke and don't exercise, our bodies just give up.
Fasting potentially through this 2-day thing. It'd be cool to get your thoughts about fasting in general. Do you think on a personal level and at a higher sort of level of studies that you're aware of and physiology and so on, what do you think about intermittent fasting, of like not eating for 16 hours and then having an 8-hour window, or something I've been doing a lot recently, which is eating only once a day? So that's 24-hour fast, I guess, one meal a day. Or something I've been thinking about doing, haven't done yet, of doing like 72 hours, or some people do like 5-day fasts in general. So this would be, for this particular run, would be a 48-hour fast if I don't eat at all. What do you think about that for performance, for mood, for all those kinds of things?
Sachin has published papers, peer-reviewed papers in very good journals like Cell and elsewhere, showing that limiting the consumption of calories to 8, 4, 6, or 8, or even 10 hours of every 24-hour cycle, and keeping that more or less correlated with the light, with when the sun is out, leads to less liver disease, improved metabolic markers, less body fat, etc. In the mouse studies, they even gave the mice the choice to eat whatever they wanted, as much as they wanted, as long as they restricted it to a certain period within the 24-hour cycle. They did great. They maintained a healthy weight or even lost weight. When they took the same amount of food and they stretched it out across the entire 24-hour cycle, so this is eating every hour or 2 hours, the animals got fat and sick. So it's pretty remarkable data. How much of that translates to humans isn't clear, but one thing that's really clear with humans is adherence, right? We could talk a lot about nutrition, and some of the problems with the studies on nutrition is that what people will do in a laboratory is often hard to do in the real world. Low carbohydrate diets, because they tend to focus on foods that have high amino acid content, like meats. Generally, people are less hungry on those than they are on calorie matched diets of fruits and vegetables and carbohydrates, because when the insulin goes up, you get hungry and you want to eat more. So this is not a push for carnivore or a push against one thing or the other. It's just, there are a lot of factors. But we know for sure that when you're fasted or when you have low amounts of carbohydrate in your system, complex carbohydrate, your alertness is going to go up. Fast increases alertness and epinephrine for the sole purpose of getting you to go out and find food. Can you imagine if our ancestors got hungry and they were like, oh, I'm too tired to go find food? We wouldn't be here. It'd be like robots or one of your alien buddies will be like running the planet. Dream. So I think that if you want to be alert, fasting or keeping complex carbohydrates to a minimum is very valuable. If you want to sleep and you want to be sleepy, ingesting foods that have a lot of tryptophan, which is the precursor to serotonin, so complex carbohydrates like rice and grains, turkey, white meats, those things do create a sense of sleepiness. However, there is a caveat, and this is one problem with the once a day meal, is that anytime you have a lot of food in the gut, you're increasing sleepiness because you're diverting blood to the gut. It's going to trigger the vagus to signal to the brain to shut down your system and utilize those nutrients, digest and utilize those nutrients. So I've done the once a day eating thing. The problem is I eat so much in that meal that I'm exhausted. And so it doesn't always lend itself well to the schedule. But so in a 6 or 8 hour eating block for me is a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I do eat carbohydrates. I'm probably one of the few people left on the West Coast that actually consumes carbohydrates. The other time is if people are doing very high intensity weight training, they need to replenish glycogen.
Yeah. On the alertness side, I do feel like it's probably person dependent. For me, alertness, being alert makes my life better in a lot of ways, more than just the alertness itself. Like, for example, one of the things I discovered with fasting is that when I was training twice a day in jiu-jitsu, for example, and competing and so on, I performed way better at things that you traditionally would say you need carbs for, which is explosive movements and all that. I don't know if I actually perform better in terms of like the force of the explosion, mm-hmm. the explosiveness. What I do know is the alertness resulted in me doing the technique more precisely.
That's the dopamine and epinephrine system in action. And there's there are some other just purely physical aspects to one diet versus the other that can be complicated. If you're ingesting carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, you're going to replenish glycogen, which is great, but they also tend to be bulky and fibrous. And I've never rolled jiu-jitsu, but running when you have a lot of bulky fibrous food in your gut or in your intestine, it can be a barrier. It can be uncomfortable. And so some people do really well on low carbohydrate, meat-rich diets because they're just not as bloated. They're not carrying as much water and other stuff. Carbohydrate carries a lot of water molecules with it. So there are aspects to being able to train and being really explosive because you feel light. One anecdote that really, again, I'm not encouraging any one particular kind of diet, but I have a friend who was in the SEAL teams. I happen to know a number of people in that community, and he told me that he did this very long fast. It was a fast that I think you get to eat a little bit of soup or broth, and there's like a bar or something, but it's like a 9-day thing. Mm-hmm. And he's a very strong athlete, and he said that on day 6 or 7, he was running up some hills or something while he was on deployment, and he felt amazing. He kind of hit this other level. He was somebody who had boxed in the Naval Academy. He was somebody who knows and knew high output. And he felt like he discovered the 13th floor, that there was another floor to this performance space that he hadn't experienced except while he had fasted. And he said that was a remarkable clarity of mind, energy. It's a little bit of what you described. Mm-hmm. He described a kind of suppleness and explosiveness. So there's probably something there.
On which day?
At once he was in the 5th or 6th day of the fast.
See, this is the thing is I've never been there on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th day, that kind of thing. But when I just don't eat for 20 hours, many times through my training, the clarity, it's like you feel like everyone is moving super slowly, mm-hmm. and you're able to like dominate people you weren't able to before. It's like,
well, you might have slipped into, or switched over rather, into full ketosis.
So I wanted to create a video on the 23 benefits of OMAD, one meal a day, diet, which is not really a diet. It's a kind of a type of intermittent fasting where you're going 23 hours of fasting and 1 hour of eating. And yes, people love food, but you could actually set it up so, let's say you have a social event or you go out to dinner and that's when your meal is, so you're around friends. So you're not sitting there at a restaurant just like not eating. That would be not good. But let's talk about the benefits. Number one, you're gonna save a lot of money. When you're only eating 1 meal a day, you'll probably save at least $600 a month just on that alone. It's gonna save a lot of time, so you can do other things that are productive. Most people spend a lot of time eating, preparing for food. It takes a lot of work. Number three, improving digestion. You're gonna give your gallbladder a chance to rest, the stomach, the pancreas, the large bowel, especially if you have irritable bowel syndrome, it'll actually help you heal that. It improves the immune system. Also, it puts your body into something called autophagy, which is the recycling of junk proteins and damaged protein particles and recycles it into new tissue. But it also recycles viruses, fungus, mold, candida, which also is going to help your immune system right there. So it's kind of an immune strengthening activity. You're going to live longer, which is a good thing. You're going to be a lot less hungry. You would think by not eating, you're going to be starving all the time, but not when you fully adapt to fat burning. Your hunger is going to go away. No more cravings. It's going to make it really easy to do this, but of course it takes a while to get into this keto state. But when you're fully there, you're not going to crave anymore. Better skin. Because of the autophagy and the anti-aging effects, your skin is going to be a lot smoother and younger. Increased energy, tons of physical energy. Number 11, increased mood. If you're depressed, you have anxiety, you have to realize that comes from a blood sugar problem. And when that's handled, your mood's going to come way up. You're going to feel much better. Number 12, increased cognitive function. This is great for dementia, improving your memory, focus, concentration, all that will improve. 13, decrease inflammatory conditions, whether you have bursitis, tendinitis, arthritis, that's going to go away because the blood sugar issues will cause inflammatory. Number 13, decrease inflammatory conditions, whether you have bursitis, tendinitis, arthritis, or even rheumatoid arthritis, this is great for that. Decrease blood pressure, okay? What causes blood pressure is high insulin. So this program will decrease insulin, your blood pressure will come down. Number 15, heart disease. If there's one thing that'll improve your arteries, it's doing intermittent fasting more than probably any other thing that you can possibly do. If we take the reverse of that and do high insulin and you have insulin resistance and you're a diabetic, you are going to have a lot of problems in your arteries. Number 16, improving dementia. Okay, that's related to the cognitive function. And number 17 is definitely going to improve if you have diabetes. It's going to actually help prevent diabetes. It's going to improve the pre-diabetes, which is insulin resistance. It's going to improve, if not fix, hypoglycemia, which so many people have. They don't even know they have that. Number 18, it's going to actually help you if you have a fatty liver. It will take fat off the liver. Number 19, it's going to turn your body into a fat-burning machine on steroids. You're going to lose your belly. You're going to get a flat belly, which is really cool. Number 20, it's going to really help your discipline because you're doing something that is almost an exercise in discipline or strengthening your self-discipline, and that's going to improve because your ability to withstand from food for 23 hours. So it'll improve your willpower and your discipline over that. 21, improve your muscle physiology, muscle density. You would think by not eating, you would worsen your muscles. Not the case. You go through a whole thing where your growth hormone improves. That's the anti-aging hormone. But growth hormone has a protective factor against muscle loss. So this is very important, especially if you want to improve your muscle density and muscle mass. Number 22, it'll actually fix your metabolic rate. If you have a slow metabolism, this is the thing you need to do to finally raise it and actually get the fat off. Number 23, it's really going to improve your mental clarity. A lot of times people even feel like this euphoric feeling. You're going to feel really good. And all of a sudden they start eating and then they feel worse. Okay, so definitely something you should think about doing. Food for thought, no pun intended.